Hello everyone. Today we are going to be talking about gender in Spanish. Now, gender is a very complicated topic because it is one of the biggest differences between Spanish and English, right? Not that gender does not play a role in English, but it certainly does not play as big of a role in English as it does in Spanish, right? So let me brief this video by, preface this video by saying every noun in Spanish has a gender. So when students hear this, they go, what? So that means that table has a gender, phone has a gender, computer has a gender, right? And it could either be masculine or feminine. But in terms of gender, when it comes to English, gender is only really going to be the issue of gender would only come up when it comes to referring to persons, like using the right pronoun, he or she, or where are using certain nouns, especially with regard to like professions. For example, you would have a waiter, which would be the male, and then the female would be called a waitress, right? So instances like those are the only instances really that the issue of gender would come up in English. Also with adjectives, there's some adjectives that we would more attribute to a man than we would to a woman. For example, handsome. We would more say that a man is handsome than a woman. Even though if you say that the woman is handsome, that would not be ungrammatical. It's not really commonly used, but it wouldn't be really ungrammatical, right? But with Spanish, the gender is a very, very crucial part, because if you use the wrong adjective, it will be wrong. But we'll get to that, don't worry. All right. So if every noun in Spanish has a gender, well, the obvious question is going to be, how do we know which gender the noun is, right? So generally we can observe the suffix of the word, and in order to determine which gender the word belongs to, right? So we'll start with the masculine, right? Gents first. Right. Words that have the following suffixes are generally masculine, and I have generally in red because there are many exceptions to this rule. This is just a general guideline that you can use to identify words that are masculine, right? So masculine words typically will end in the following suffixes: o, or ahe, right? As you see from the examples here: el paro, unemployment; el conductor, driver; and el rodaje, filming, right? And you would also notice that I have an article before them. So you would know that el is a masculine article, but that's something that we will also get to in the future. And by the future, I mean like next part, right? So words that generally have these suffixes are going to be masculine, right? But there are also other words that are going to be masculine, okay? Numbers. And why numbers? Because the word for number in Spanish is el número, right? So these that I have highlighted here underneath the suffixes, these are going to be masculine because the word itself is masculine, right? The word in Spanish is masculine, okay? So numbers, el número, so el siete, 7, colors, el verde, green; days of the week, el lunes, that's Monday; months of the year, el mayo. The word for month in Spanish is el mes. The word for day in Spanish is el día. And the word for color in Spanish is el color. Therefore, these are going to be masculine, okay? So if we look this side, we also have examples of words that are masculine, okay? So cardinal points are going to be masculine. El norte, north. Languages, the word for language in Spanish is idioma, which is masculine, el idioma. So that is going to be masculine. El francés, French. Rivers, oceans, and seas are going to be masculine as well. The word for river is el río. The word for ocean is el océano. And the word for sea is el mar. Okay? So here we have examples. El Amazonas, the Amazon River. El Pacífico, the Pacific or the Pacific Ocean. El Mar Caribe, the Caribbean Sea. Alright? So those are going to be masculine. Now, I would have told you earlier that these are general, especially when it comes to the suffixes. Those are general because there are many exceptions to the rule. Okay? So let's see some of these exceptions. La mano, hand. You see mano ends in O, but it's feminine. And of course that's the feminine article, la, which we'll get to. La moto, la photo. Now these are examples of words that have been abbreviated, and since they have been abbreviated, but they are actually feminine words because moto is motorcycle, but that's a shortened form. The word for motorcycle in Spanish is la motocicleta, right? So that's feminine, but this is just a shortened form. But you see it ends in O, right? But it's feminine. But the word itself is feminine. This is just an abbreviation, okay? La foto, right? Same thing. The word for, this is photo, the word for photo is actually fotografía, right? So that's a feminine word, all right? But it's been abbreviated, right? So this is gender, right? Now, like I said, this is a lot to digest, and I know you're going to have to probably watch this video multiple times, but we're just getting started, all right? But gender also affects determiners and adjectives, but we'll get to those a little later on. But this part here would be words that are masculine in Spanish. So now we're going to proceed to words that are feminine. Okay, so we move on to feminine nouns. All right, so how do we know that a word is feminine, right? So just like the masculine, we have to look at the suffixes, and again, these are only guidelines, okay? So words that have the following suffixes are generally feminine. So the suffixes would be a, sion, d, or de, right, and c, and the letter z, right? So if a word ends in these, it most likely is feminine, right? So examples, la zona, zone, la nación, nation, la juventud, youth, and la paz, peace, right? So those are just examples of feminine words, or generally feminine words, okay? Now, there are other words or other elements that are feminine in Spanish, right? And just like the masculine, these are feminine because the word itself is feminine. So letters of the alphabet, the word for letter in Spanish is la letra, okay? So it is already feminine. So any of the letters in Spanish would be feminine, right? La H, which is H, right? The letter H. Names of islands, the word for island is isla, la isla. So Example, Las Antillas. That is Antilles, right? And companies, well, the word for company would be feminine because you could either say la compañía, you could say la empresa, la corporación. So all of those are feminine. So this is why you would refer to companies as feminine, right? La Microsoft, Microsoft. Okay, so now we get to the exceptions. So many Spanish words ending in MA, PA, or TA are masculine as a result of being of Greek origin. Okay, so a lot of those words that you see that end in MA, PA, or TA, and notice that they do end in A, right? But they are going to be masculine, and the reason is that these are words that have Greek origin. They're Greek words, right? So when they're borrowings, the words are usually going to be feminine. So this is the reason that these words are, sorry, what am I talking about? Right, because these are of Greek origin, they are masculine, right? So this is the reason that these are masculine instead of feminine, okay? So examples, el día. You see that ends in A, but it's masculine. That means day. Problema, problem, right? El planeta, planet. El mapa, map. So you see that all of these end in A, but they are masculine, right? So this will cover feminine nouns in Spanish, all right? So now we are going to get into how gender affects determiners, okay? So that's the next part that we'll be going to. Okay, so we move on to determiners, okay? And the first determiner that we will look at today will be articles. And if you don't know what a determiner is, a determiner is simply a word that is placed before a noun that gives extra information, whether it be an amount or it could be related to specificity, right? So we're going to start with articles, right? So, of course, you know, we have two types of articles. We have the indefinite and the definite article. The indefinite would be a, right? So that is not really referring to anything specific. That's more general, okay? So in Spanish, a could either be un or una, right? So for masculine nouns, if we want to say a and the noun is masculine and singular, we would use un. So un libro, a book. Okay? We could also say one book, right? So this could also excuse me. This could also translate as one. Un libro, a book. Okay? Una would be the feminine equivalent. Una mesa, a table, right? So if we want to say a something, obviously that's singular. We would use un or una depending on the gender of the noun, right? Now to make things plural, we would just add s. Well, the masculine plural will be a little different because we have to add os. So unos libros, some books, because you know the plural of a would be some, right? And unas mesas, some tables. You notice I use the same noun, right? So this is how they would be plural, right? So the indefinite article a in Spanish is either going to be un or una, depending on the gender of the noun, okay? And to make them plural, the masculine form would be unos and the feminine form would be unas, right? Now the definite article the, all right? Now that would refer to something specific, okay? So the in the singular form, we have el and la. El would be for masculine nouns, right? Singular masculine nouns. So el libro, the book, okay? La would be the feminine, la mesa, the table, okay? And if we want to make these plural, well, the masculine is going to be a little different. We say los. So los libros, the books. Las mesas, the tables. All right? So when it comes to articles, this is how gender would affect articles. You have to choose the right article depending on the gender. As you see, the article will be different depending on the gender. And of course the number as well. But yeah. Alright. So this would cover articles. Now we're going to proceed to demonstratives. Okay, so we move on to demonstratives. And demonstratives are going to be words like this, that, those, these, right. So we'll start with this and these. And you know this would be singular and these would be the plural. So these would be the plural of this, right? So how do you say this in Spanish? Okay, so if you're talking about a masculine noun, we use este. Este coche, this car, because of course car is masculine. Este coche. If you want to say this and the noun is feminine, we say esta cama. Esta cama, this bed. Alright? If we want to make them plural, and you know the plural of this would be these, we would say estos coches, these cars. If you want to say these and the noun is feminine and plural, we would say estas camas, these beds. Okay? So you see I have the gender and the number laid out as well. So let's move over to that and those. You know that would be the singular and those would be the plural, okay? So the masculine form that, we would say that car, ese coche, that car. The feminine singular, that would be esa cama, that bed. The plural masculine would be esos. You notice the masculine plural always has a little bit of a difference. Esos coches, those cars. Plural feminine, esas camas, those beds. Okay? So that in Spanish would be ese or esa. And those would be esos or esas. And of course, those are going to depend on the gender and the number of the noun. Alright? So let's move over to another demonstrative. That over there. Not just that, but that over there. Okay? And then of course the plural will be those over there. Right? So the masculine is going to be aquel coche, that car over there. The feminine is going to be aquella cama, that bed over there. Aquellos coches, once again the masculine always wants to be different. Aquellos coches, those cars over there. And aquellas camas, those beds over there. So that over there is going to be either aquel or aquella, depending on the gender. And those over there would be aquellos or aquellas, of course, depending on the gender and the number. Alright? So these will be demonstratives. Let's proceed to possessives. So we move on to possessives. And as you see here, all the possessives are not mentioned because the other possessives are not affected by gender, okay? By the gender of the noun. For example, if I want to say my car, right? Or, you know, car is masculine, so mi coche. But if I want to say my table, and table is feminine, mesa, I say mi mesa, my table. So the mi is going to be used for a feminine noun as well as a masculine noun. There is no difference there. Okay, so those are not affected by gender, right? So these ones that you see here are the ones that are affected by gender. So our, right? The singular masculine is going to be nuestro. So nuestro padre, our father. Nuestra is the feminine counterpart. Nuestra madre, our mother. If you want to make them plural, we simply add s. So nuestros padres, our fathers. That could also translate as parents, right? Nuestras, feminine. Nuestras madres, our mothers. Okay? So the our has to agree with the noun that follows, right? It has to agree with the noun that follows. As you see, padre is masculine, so it will be nuestro. Madre is feminine, so it will be nuestra, our mother. And of course, if we want to make them plural, we add s. Now, your. This is going to be the plural form of the second person, not the singular, the plural form, because the singular form is two. All right? Will be two. So if I want to say your father, and this is the singular form, I would say tu padre, your father. And it's like I said, that's not one that's affected by gender, so I could also say tu madre, your mother. So this is going to apply to the vosotros or vosotras, which is used in Spain. So the singular, vuestro padre, your father. Vuestras, vuestra, no, that's a mistake. Should be singular. Vuestra, vuestra madre, okay? Your mother. And of course, like I said, we're talking about a group more than one person, right? But of course, it still has to agree with the noun that follows, right? In terms of gender and number. Plural, vuestros, vuestros padres, your fathers. Like I said, that could also translate as your parents. And vuestras, vuestras madres, your mothers. Because that's the feminine. Alright? Now, whose. Whose has a lot of functions, as you know. But in this case, we're talking about whose as a possessive. Right? So when we say whose, we're not asking a question. Whose is usually going to give additional information about a noun that was previously mentioned. Right? Or something that was previously mentioned. Someone or something that was, well, someone that was previously mentioned, right? Because this is person, right? So the singular, cuyo, cuyo padre, whose father. Cuya, cuya madre, whose mother. So let me give you an example so it will be clear. Yo conozco a un chico cuyo padre es profesor. So I know a boy whose father is a teacher. So you see the cuyo in that case is giving additional information about the boy. It's talking about his father, but it has to be singular and masculine because we have a singular masculine noun in padre, cuyo padre. Okay, So that's how whose would also be affected by gender, right? And if we want to make it plural, we just add an S. Cuyos and cuyas, right? I didn't have enough space to write an example, but I would just say cuyos padres, whose parents, and cuyas madres, cuyos padres would also be whose fathers, and cuyas madres would be whose mothers. All right? So those would be possessives in Spanish when it comes to gender. Now we're going to proceed to quantifiers. So we move on to quantifiers. And if you don't know what a quantifier is going to give the amount of a noun without being specific, right? So that's the definition of a quantifier, okay? So, of course, the quantifiers you see here would be the ones that are mainly affected by gender, because there are other quantifiers, of course, right? So, few or little, right? And the word for that is poco. So, poco miedo, a little fear, right? So that's talking about fear as a concept. Feminine, poca gente, few people. Now, you would think that gente is plural, yes, but in Spanish it is singular. The word itself is singular, but of course it refers to a lot of persons, right? But in Spanish the word gente is singular, so we use the singular feminine quantifier poca gente, few people. So if you want to make that plural, pocos miedos, little fears, right? And plural feminine, pocas personas. Obviously, personas will now be plural and feminine, right? So we can't say pocas gente because gente is singular, right? Now, the word poco could actually be an adverb, and when it's an adverb, it would just be poco. It wouldn't change to poca, none of that. So an example, ella come poco. That means that she doesn't eat much, right? She doesn't eat much. That's what poco would mean as an adverb, right? Any or some, right? Which is algún. So algún with the tilde on the U would be the masculine singular. Algún ruido, any noise. Feminine, alguna casa, any house. The plural masculine, algunos ruidos, some noises. And the plural feminine, algunas casas, some houses, right? So that would be any. Too many or too much would be demasiado. Demasiado would be masculine singular. Demasiado ruido, too much noise. Demasiada esperanza, too much hope. Demasiados ruidos, too many noises, because obviously if it's plural now it has to be many. And demasiadas casas, too many houses. And like poco, demasiado can be an adverb, right? So if I were to say él habla demasiado, that means he talks too much. As an adverb, it would not change, it would just be demasiado. But here we are using them as adjectives, so they have to agree with the noun in terms of gender and number, right? Okay, so let's move over this side. So we have many, much, and a lot of, right? That's another quantifier in Spanish. Mucho. Mucho would be singular masculine equivalent. Mucho miedo, a lot of fear. Mucha gente, just like you know, gente is singular, so that would be many people or a lot of people. Muchos miedos, many fears. So the fears now will be countable. Muchas personas, many persons. Right? And every and all, todo ruido, every noise. Toda casa, every house. Toda casa, every house. Todos ruidos, all noises. And todas casas, all houses. Right? So you see how the quantifier will change to agree with the noun it's describing in terms of gender and number. Alright? So these are quantifiers. These are the main quantifiers that are affected by gender. And now we are going to end off with adjectives, because I'm going to show you how gender affects adjectives in Spanish. So we move on to the final segment of this lecture. Yeah, I know it's been long, but trust me, we're at the end. Okay, so we are going to look at adjectives now, and as you know, an adjective is affected by gender in Spanish. Now, along with number as well, because adjectives have to agree with the nouns they describe in terms of gender and number, right? So let's go. So adjectives that end in O will usually be the singular masculine form. To form the feminine, the O is changed to A. So if you see an adjective that ends in O, this will typically be the masculine form, the adjective used for masculine nouns, right? So for example, el coche bonito, the beautiful car. And of course you see that the adjectives usually follow the nouns in Spanish. The beautiful car. We can't say el coche bonita. That would be ungrammatical because bonita is for feminine nouns, right? So here, la mujer bonita. So you see that the O will change to A because we have a feminine noun, right? And they're singular. If we wanted to make them plural, we would say los coches bonitos, because everything has to agree, even the articles. Los coches bonitos would be the beautiful cars, and las mujeres bonitas would be the beautiful women, right? And as you see, to make this plural, you would have to add es because it ends in a consonant, right? Because well, not because it necessarily ends in a consonant, but because it ends in R. To make the plural, es has to be added, right? But usually with consonants you add es, yes. But it's with the O or the A that you would add an S, right? But yeah, so las mujeres bonitas. Now, adjectives that end in E or E star do not change according to gender. They only change for number. So if an adjective ends in E or E star, right, it will be one of those adjectives that can be used for either masculine nouns or feminine nouns, right? So, la película era interesante. You see, interesante ends in E, but it is used with a feminine noun. This could also be used with a masculine noun, right? So you could say, el libro era interesante. Right, the book was interesting. So, interesante can be used with both masculine and feminine nouns, right? Of course, once they're singular. If you want to make this plural, we would say las películas eran interesantes. And over here, we have an adjective that ends in ista. El hombre es idealista. The man is idealistic. You notice it ends in ista, but this can be used for both a masculine noun and a feminine noun. As you see here, we have a masculine noun, right? If you want to make that plural, los hombres son idealistas, right? So yeah. Next part. Adjectives that end in a consonant only change for number, right? So you see here, La mesa es azul, the table is blue. Azul ends in L, which is a consonant, so that isn't affected by gender. So azul will be used for a feminine noun and a masculine noun. Of course, once it's singular. So La mesa es azul, the table is blue. If we want to make it plural, the only change we would have to add es to make it plural, just like we did with mujer, right? With the consonants, right? So las mesas son azules, the tables are blue, right? Las mesas son azules, the tables are blue, right? And azules could be related to a feminine noun that is plural, of course, or a masculine noun that is plural. That, right? But the exceptions for adjectives that end in or, on, or in, the feminine will be formed by adding a. So trabajador, which means hardworking, that would be masculine form, singular. But if we want to make it feminine, we would say trabajadora, right? So we would have to add an a onto r, right? To get the feminine singular. If we want to make it plural, trabajadores, so we add es, right? So you see that you're going to add es with consonants to make them plural, and that would be the masculine plural, and trabajadoras, just add an s, would be the feminine plural, okay? It's a lot to take in, I know. Like I said, you'll have to watch this video multiple times. And like adjectives that end in O, when it comes to nouns like professions, many times the profession that ends in O will refer to the masculine form and the A will refer to the feminine form, right? So we would see that, but there are lots of exceptions with that as well. Alright, so for example, maestro would be a male teacher and maestra would be a female teacher, right? So, yeah, but there are lots of exceptions to that as well, right? So these are adjectives, alright? I hope that you survived this lesson, you were able to understand everything. Muchas gracias por ver y nos vemos.